Philadelphia's sanctuary city status is under intense fire after the brutal rape of a 5-year-old girl by an illegal immigrant. And the U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania, which oversees Philly, says he's had enough. William McSwain recently sat down with us about his efforts to fight back against the city's sanctuary policies and their devastating consequences. Mr. McSwain, thank you for joining us. Good to have you with us. So, you're U.S. attorney in the very important city of Philadelphia, and there is a big controversy there, as you are acutely aware of, involving the sanctuary status of Philadelphia. Tell me why, from your perspective, and then we're going to get into the specific case, why your perspective, sanctuary status is harmful for public safety.
Well, fundamentally, those of us in law enforcement aren't supposed to play favorites. Those of us who are prosecutors aren't supposed to play favorites. That's a fundamental principle because we are supposed to enforce the rule of law, and that means that we're supposed to enforce the law in a fair, nonpartisan manner. The problem with sanctuary cities is they sort of turn that whole principle on its head and they politicize law enforcement.
How do you mean?
I mean that what they stand for the proposition that a certain group of people are not going to be subject to our laws for political purposes. Namely, we're talking about illegal immigrants.
Well, they make the opposite claim. Those who are defending the sanctuary city policies, including the mayor and his boosters, Mayor Kenny and his boosters, they'll say, actually, sanctuary status keeps the place safer because illegal immigrants won't go to the authorities otherwise because they're going to be afraid of being deported. So it actually makes the city less safe if you don't have a sanctuary policy in place. How do you respond to that?
I think actually they have it exactly backwards. They do say that they think that it fosters trust among the community and law enforcement in order to not enforce immigration laws. But actually, I think what fosters trust between the community and law enforcement is when the community knows that law enforcement is not going to play favorites. If they know that the rule of law is going to be respected, the broader community, therefore, believes that law enforcement is doing their job. So when the proponents of sanctuary cities make that argument that you just articulated, I think they have it exactly backwards.
Well, the DA of Philadelphia, Larry Krasner, he is not too pleased with your criticism of the sanctuary city policy. He said about your statement linking this rape by this Juan Ramon Vasquez, who was released, ended up raping a member of his own family, a 5-year-old child. He said, well, that's very dramatic to somehow link the sanctuary status to this rape. The Trump administration has made it so that immigrant children can get raped because they're afraid to call the police due to its policies of deporting people who are victims. So they're linking Trump to you, the deportation of actual victims of domestic violence, and you're seeing this bubble up with the judge versus Jeff Sessions yesterday. So how do you respond to that? Now, he's hitting you hard, saying you're just basically, this is typical Trump administration stuff from you.
I think that fundamentally the problem with that statement is a political statement. He's going political. I am doing my best as a law enforcement officer to enforce the law in a neutral, nonpartisan, apolitical manner. And when you are a proponent of sanctuary cities, you're actually, again, you're politicizing law enforcement. I think that the DA in Philadelphia, unfortunately, takes a political approach to a lot of issues in law enforcement. And what I'm saying is that respect for the rule of law is a nonpartisan.
But they say we're not the immigration force. We're not a federal immigration force. We have our hands full already.
Well, the fundamental problem, again, is that not only are sanctuary cities, in my view, wrong, but they're essentially un-American. Let me explain that a little bit. When you come before the law in America, it's not supposed to matter who you are or where you're from, or who your parents are, or the like. Everybody is supposed to be treated equally. So if you politicize the law and you say, we're not going to enforce the law against a certain group of people, we're only going to enforce it against others, you're essentially doing something that I believe is un-American because you're not respecting the rule of law.
It's not equal justice under the law.
Correct.
Juan Ramon Vasquez, let's get back to that case. 2014, he was arrested on an aggravated assault. He was released. He was a legal immigrant A year and a half later, he was found to have raped a member of his own family, 5-year-old little girl. And then, of course, when he's released in 2014, that was sanctuary city time, and they say, well, making that leap from his release to the rape and sanctuary policies, that's unfair. Do you squarely, obviously it's his fault for doing the rape, he's liable, but did the sanctuary city policy facilitate the rape of this little girl?
And not only facilitate it, it's 100% responsible for it, and that is non-controversial. What happened in the timeline was Mr. Vasquez was deported in 2009. He then illegally re-entered the country. He was arrested for assault in 2014, and we placed a detainer on him, which is a request that if he's released from local custody, they give the feds a heads up. We take him into federal custody, and we deport him. Unfortunately, Philadelphia, because they are a sanctuary city, do not respect detainers. So when Mr. Vasquez was released in 2014, we didn't know about it. The Philadelphia prison officials didn't tell us about it, and instead of him coming into federal custody, where he would have been deported to Honduras and had no opportunity to commit any further crimes in Philadelphia, instead he went into the community, and as you said, he raped a 5-year-old.
Mayor Kenney, you might have seen this video 1 or 2 or 3 times, reacted to that court ruling that affirmed the ability to have this sanctuary status without any federal diminution in funding. And he did the big Snoopy dance. Let's watch.
A sanctuary city, yeah. A sanctuary city, yeah.
So he's thrilled that they could cut off access to the feds to the city arrest database. So the federal government could not get any, even if they wanted to get access in this sanctuary policy, they could not have access, even to know who's in the state pen.
Correct. And one of the larger sort of issues at stake here is that in the post-9/11 world, it's very, very important that all levels of law enforcement, state, local, federal, that they're talking to each other.
I thought that's what the point. I thought after 9/11, everyone was supposed to talk to each other. Obviously, FBI, CIA. But aren't we all supposed to be working together as Americans to keep our communities, our country safe? I really do not understand the sanctuary stuff. I don't.
Well,
I don't get it.
The problem is, prior to 9/11, a lot of law enforcement were in silos. They weren't talking to each other. They weren't communicating. We've made a lot of progress since then. And I think that having, for example, a sanctuary city policy where the locals are not communicating with the federal authorities and are, in fact, defying federal law is a step backwards. And we do that at our own peril.
Now, you're not a political figure, but you live in Philadelphia. You live in the area. What is your sense about the constituents? I mean, minorities, the poor, the disadvantaged are the ones who are victimized the most by recidivist illegal immigrant crime. Any sense about how they're feeling about this mayor?
Again, I think that what people want is they want to know that their law enforcement officers, whether they're federal or local or state, are enforcing the rule of law in a nonpartisan, fair manner, treating everybody fairly. And it is fundamentally un-American and fundamentally unfair to not enforce the law against an entire population.
Any sense about these nationwide injunctions, the sanctuary city defund? You know, that was one federal district court ruling. We have other individual federal district court rulings on immigration.
Well, first of all, on that sanctuary cities case that you mentioned earlier, the last word hasn't been written on that. There was a case in the Eastern District of Pennsylvania, my district, that was ruled on, but there's lots of these cases going on around the country, and they all sort of percolate their way up through the court system.
They're supposed to. There shouldn't be a nationwide injunction with one district court judge, or should there be?
No, there shouldn't. And what you want is you want several courts to look at an issue, have the benefit of all of their analysis, and eventually these things hopefully make their way to the Supreme Court, which will have the final word.
Are you having fun as U.S. Attorney of Philadelphia? It's a pretty cool job.
It's a lot of work, but yes, I'm doing my best, enjoying it.
Thank you, Mr. McSwain. Great to see you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.